Today we are taking a deep look at one of the most serious and fast-moving geopolitical stories right now. Iranian official rhetoric hardening for war as a U.S. fleet moves closer to the region. This is not just another headline about diplomatic tension. It is a situation filled with historical baggage, military signaling, political messaging, and real risks that could affect millions of people across the Middle East and beyond. To understand what is happening, we first need to look at the words coming out of Tehran. Senior Iranian officials have been issuing increasingly blunt warnings, saying that any attack on Iranian territory or forces will be treated as an all-out war. These are not casual remarks. In international politics, such language is meant to draw a red line and to signal that Iran is prepared to escalate dramatically if it feels threatened. When officials use phrases like total retaliation or full-scale response, they are speaking not just to the United States, but also to regional rivals, domestic audiences, and even their own military commanders. At the same time, the United States has been moving significant naval assets toward the Middle East. Reports indicate that a U.S. fleet, including major warships and possibly an aircraft carrier group, is positioning itself closer to Iranian waters. From Washington's perspective, this is being framed as a deterrent move. The idea is to show strength, reassure allies, and warn Iran against aggressive actions. But from Tehran's perspective, a large foreign military presence near its borders looks like a direct threat, regardless of the official explanation. This kind of situation is a classic example of what analysts call a security dilemma. One side increases its military presence to feel safer, but the other side interprets that same move as hostile, leading it to respond in kind. Each action meant to prevent conflict can end up making conflict more likely. That is why rhetoric and signaling matter so much right now. Every statement, every ship movement, and every military exercise is being watched closely and interpreted for hidden meaning. To really grasp why emotions and tensions are running so high, we need to step back and look at the long history between Iran and the United States. Relations between the two countries have been strained for more than 4 decades, ever since the Iranian Revolution of 1979 and the hostage crisis that followed. Since then, there have been periods of limited engagement and cautious diplomacy, but also many moments of open hostility, sanctions, proxy conflicts, and near-miss military confrontations. Over the years, the U.S. has imposed extensive economic sanctions on Iran, aimed at limiting its nuclear program and curbing its regional influence. Iran, in turn, has supported armed groups across the Middle East, including in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, which the U.S. and its allies see as destabilizing. Each side believes the other is acting aggressively and unfairly, and each side uses that belief to justify its own policies. In recent months, the situation has become even more volatile due to a mix of internal and external pressures on Iran. Inside the country, there have been waves of protests against the government, driven by economic hardship, political repression, and social restrictions. The government's response has been harsh, leading to international condemnation and further sanctions. From Tehran's point of view, these sanctions are not just economic measures. They are seen as part of a broader campaign to weaken the state and possibly even provoke regime change. This internal unrest makes the current military standoff even more dangerous. Leaders under domestic pressure sometimes turn to external threats to rally national unity and distract from internal problems. When Iranian officials use strong, defiant language about the U.S. fleet, they are not only speaking to Washington. They are also speaking to their own people, trying to project strength and resolve at a time when their legitimacy is being questioned at home. On the American side, political dynamics also play a major role. With elections, partisan divisions, and shifting public opinion, U.S. leaders are under pressure to appear tough on Iran. No administration wants to be accused of weakness, especially after years of criticism over foreign policy decisions in the Middle East. Sending a fleet and issuing warnings can be a way to show that the U.S. is still a dominant power and that it will defend its interests and allies. However, this show of force comes with serious risks. When military units operate close to each other in tense environments, the chances of accidents, miscalculations, or misunderstandings increase. A radar misreading, a misfired missile, or a local commander acting too aggressively could spark a chain reaction that leaders never intended. History is full of examples where wars began not because someone wanted them, but because events spiraled out of control. Iranian officials are clearly trying to deter such actions by raising the stakes. By saying that any attack will be treated as an all-out war, they are attempting to make the cost of even a limited US strike seem unbearably high. This is a classic deterrence strategy. The message is simple: do not test us, because the consequences will be severe. Whether this strategy will succeed depends on how credible both sides find each other's threats. Another important layer to this story is the role of regional actors. Countries like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates have their own deep concerns about Iran's military capabilities and regional influence. Some of these countries quietly support strong US pressure on Tehran, while others worry that a full-scale conflict would devastate the region. Any clash between Iran and the US would not remain limited to those two countries. It would likely involve multiple actors, proxy forces, and possibly attacks on shipping lanes, oil facilities, and civilian infrastructure. The global economic impact of such a conflict could be enormous. The Persian Gulf is one of the world's most important energy corridors. A significant share of global oil and gas exports passes through the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has repeatedly threatened to close in the event of war. Even a temporary disruption could send oil prices soaring, triggering inflation and economic instability far beyond the Middle East. This is why international reactions to the current crisis are so cautious. European governments, China, and Russia have all called for restraint and dialogue, even as they pursue their own strategic interests. Diplomats behind the scenes are likely working to reopen communication channels, clarify intentions, and prevent miscalculations. But diplomacy is much harder when public rhetoric is so confrontational and when both sides feel politically constrained from backing down. The language used by Iranian officials also reflects deeper strategic thinking. Iran's military doctrine is based on what it calls forward defense and asymmetric warfare. Rather than matching the US ship for ship or plane for plane, Iran relies on missiles, drones, fast attack boats, cyber operations, and allied militias across the region. When officials talk about all-out war, they are not necessarily talking about a conventional battlefield clash. They are signaling that any conflict would be multi-front, unpredictable, and costly for everyone involved. The phrase "girds for war" is especially telling. It suggests not just verbal threats, but real preparations. This could include military drills, troop movements, heightened alert levels, and logistical planning. When both sides start preparing for worst-case scenarios, it becomes psychologically harder to step back. Each side begins to assume that conflict is inevitable, which in turn makes actions that increase the risk of conflict seem more acceptable. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel.